response video to this turd. Monstrously smelly, disgusting, worm-laden turd. Alright, Star Wars and Amendum. Two things that haven't been right since 1980. 1980s. Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that are fucked up since the 80s, have to concede. But again, yeah, I don't know, it's a little bit too obscure a title for me. You know, so the law, the Constitution, has something to do with the 80s. I guess I'd argue that the Constitution was more accurately interpreted in 1980s than it is now. And I'd say it was even better interpreted in 1940s. But anyway, let's go through some of this crap. I'm not going to play. I mean, I've only gotten 15 minutes into this thing. It's just a huge pile of ad hominem crap. You know, circus, monkey, rhetoric, all kinds of bullshit. Just a horrible pile of shit. He's got an hour more of this crap. I haven't gotten through the 6 minutes of the other pile of shit video. But these are just disgusting. So, yeah, I should go through the comments eventually. I guess I'll wait till the comments pile up, and then I'll go through those idiots. This is just more, Gary's hilarious, Gary's stupid, Gary's scary, dumb, dumb, dumb. But nothing like a real argument shows up. So anyway, so when he starts getting to an argument now, he wants to argue Orwell. And he brings it up. Yeah, I wish edible napalm. Right, you instigated this shit. So yeah, why don't you do a video explaining to me how this is a fair fight? You know, how this asshole has paraphrased anything accurately or correctly. Why don't you explain to him how many fucking times I've said the word excessive taxation? You know, I mean, this is just this bullshit. Like, I'm going to argue with an asshole who's going to keep telling me the government can tax cigarettes. Yeah, I know they can tax cigarettes. It was never a part of my argument. It wasn't in my legal papers. Nowhere have I ever stated they don't have a right to tax cigarettes. Shithead. Well, I'll get to that part of the argument later. Anyway, all right. So back to the Orwell thing. So he reads. You know, he spends a couple minutes reading, quote mining Orwell on socialism, which doesn't have anything to do with my argument about Orwell. I simply pointed out, as you know, Piro did some videos on Orwell, and the basic point is that Orwell was for maybe a policy where you gave people, everybody, all the citizens, a welfare check. Let's call it $10,000 or whatever the number would be. And if they did anything in their life that would be socially expensive, like commit a crime or do some other thing, some of that money would be taken away. And one of the things that you would lose money for is creating a social liability like children. And then you would have to pay some of this free money you got from the government back because of the liability you created by having children. And that this would put a means testing kind of a, not means testing. See, sometimes I use the wrong word. That wasn't the right phrase. Copay, okay, onto behavior. So then, you know, if there's a copay, then people feel a little bit of the pain, and maybe they won't waste things, okay? When you don't give things away for free, then people have a sense of responsibility, and they'll be more disciplined and more careful in what kind of liabilities they impose on somebody else. And that's the argument, shithead. You're wrong. I'm right. You know, and you're just an asshole. Dumb puke. I think. Punk. Oh yeah, you're a dumb punk. Yeah, that's what you are. Yeah, like I see, like to something date. I don't know what that is. It doesn't really matter. Alright, so 4 minutes into it or so. Let's see. Orwell had one kid. Oh, yeah, well, you know what? If somebody has just one child, the wife, the woman, well, that means, okay, that's basically an extinction number of children. If you have less than 2.1 children, the human race goes extinct, okay, on average. So one child is basically anti-natalism, okay? Having one child means basically that if we had to rely on you, yeah, the human race goes extinct, all right? So having one child doesn't say too much about Orwell's overall policy. And again, you can quote mine anybody, right? They do this to Einstein, they do this to everybody. So yeah, you take a quote from when somebody's 30 or when somebody's 40 or when somebody's 90, and you're going to get different quotes. So play the game. It's okay with me. I didn't state that Orwell was an anti-natalist. All I stated is that Orwell wouldn't think much of a wide open welfare state where you just paid people to have kids. I don't think he'd go for that. So whatever. Fuck you and this bullshit. Again, you brought him up. So, reading your paragraphs from, wiki pages, no, that doesn't really undo the argument. And talking about socialism, I wasn't talking about socialism. And again, nowhere in my video did I say children shouldn't be educated. I just said that the expense of educating them should be the parents' expense, just like the diapers are their expense, and whatever toys and lots of other things are the parents' expense. This is one of those things should be the parents' expense. Why don't we pay for everything for children if that's the way it's supposed to be? If having kids is supposed to be everybody else's responsibility. Yeah, I think the reason why we don't do that is because it would be stupid and unfair and obnoxious and disgusting. Alright, anyway. I never claimed he was my best friends. I didn't claim any of that shit. I just claimed that he wouldn't think much of you, fuckhead. Yeah. Okay, so another quote he did against vegetarianism. Because Orwell found the obnoxious, aggressive vegetarians obnoxious and aggressive. Somehow that means that he would, in the current context too, move him up a few years, a little more progressive, that he would find the idea, especially in a declining resource world, the idea of vegetarianism obnoxious still. Now, maybe he would change his opinion on that one. But regardless, right in there is a quote from him, 5 years off his carcass. Right? So he's very cynical about this idea of sparing people another 5 years of good health. So obviously he didn't give much shit about an extra 5 years, even back in his time when the 5 years wasn't nearly as much as it is now in terms of the fact that the 5 years is going to be 10 years. So he seems pretty cynical about this whole idea of some mommy state telling him he has to live another 5 years. And that's all you're doing, isn't it? Isn't that all you're doing, you fucking cunt? You're defending a mommy state that tells us we're supposed to live to be 90 years old. It's our obligation to do that. We're not allowed to have a lifestyle that puts that in jeopardy. Well, of course we are allowed to have a lifestyle that puts that in jeopardy, but it's only as carnivores or as drug addicts or as fat pigs or as some other kind of drunk. That's okay. It's okay to be a drunk. Okay, but it's not okay to smoke cigarettes. Yeah. Sorry, no sale. A hypocrite. Preposterous hypocrisy. Why don't we just put that in the United States Constitution? You apparently think it's an amendment to the Constitution that says preposterous hypocrisy and duplicity is okay. I mean, maybe that's what the Republicans and the rest of you fucking cunts want to do. But it's not a Constitution I'm voting for. Idiot. Okay, 1 hour videos, twice. I don't know, public education, I don't know what that is. Taxes can be, yeah, something deliberately discriminatory. So he says it. So he basically says taxes can be discriminatory. And obviously my point is they can be discriminatory, but they can't be deliberately discriminatory. They can't be with volition and knowledge. They have to pass scrutiny tests. And I think I used the Lemon test, but the Lemon test is more about religion and discrimination in religion. But let's just go with there's tests, there's scrutiny that the courts apply, levels of scrutiny. And any time you're going to abridge a liberty, those tests are invoked. And the more substantial the liberty, the higher the test becomes. But even by any of these tests, the fundamental element of the test is discriminatory nature. So it's in the test the courts apply. Now you want the exact amendments that say you can't discriminate. Well, that wasn't one of the Einstein things. That Jefferson didn't really put that in because obviously we lived in a society that likes discriminating, okay? I mean, we discriminate against women and blacks. So I don't think they could overtly say the word. But it's in there. I mean, it's in there in the cruel and unusual punishment clause, and in the search and seizure clause, and due process. Because you really don't have any due process. If there's no due process in the creation of law, in the sense that there's no common law standards applied in the creation of law, then there's no frickin' point in having due process of law. If they can make a law that says people with, 4-inch fingers have to pay more taxes than people with 3-inch fingers, then you don't have due process. If at any time they can just make some crackpot insane law, all right, then the due process is irrelevant. And, the 14th Amendment and all this other stuff would be pointless, because there'd be no point in even arguing about law, because law would mean nothing. Law would just mean whatever the fucking majority felt like doing to people. There'd be no point in writing a Bill of Rights, because the majority has all the power. There'd be no threat to the majority. So obviously there'd be no reason to confine them to some sort of scope. So again, you can't, taxes are essentially a punishment, okay? When you're using taxation in this context, it's a punishment, all right? And that's a perfectly reasonable and fair debate to take place. That when a tax doesn't explicitly, if it's not intended to, as the court in 1920 would say, equitably distribute the burden. And that was what the court cared about in 1920. That's what the Supreme Court was primarily focused on, was equitable distribution. If you're trying to punish people, well, then it's essentially a fee. It's not a tax anymore. It's a penalty. And I think it's fair to argue that excessive taxation violates the Fifth Amendment, and the 8th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. So, if you want to argue amendments. All right. Destroys the concept of minority protection and equal justice. Protection. Okay, so I circled the words excessive taxation, and again, I'll just keep making this argument that I've said the words that the tax is excessive. I pointed out the disparity between 800 and 30. I did it over and over and over again. There's just no doubt about what I'm arguing is that the tax is excessive, and this fucking liar, I mean, that's all you can call him, is a liar. You can't keep ignoring the word. I said it enough times. It was all over my legal case. And so, I'm going to argue that, because this asshole now says that my case was thrown out of court. It wasn't thrown out. I got a legal decision. So let me explain to you what I got as a legal decision. And you tell me this is the justice you think human beings in America are entitled to. When they file a lawsuit, they spend their money, they file a lawsuit, this is what they should get from a judge, a Harvard graduate judge. All right, so the first thing I got from the judge, which I have on a recording of, which he was really annoyed that I recorded it, because it does make him look like a motherfucking cunt idiot. But the judge basically said to me that I can't make constitutional claims in my plea. That's what he said. He said I don't have jurisdiction over federal constitutional claims. Now, so here's a Harvard graduate judge, lawyer, and he doesn't know that every judge has jurisdiction to decide claims of violation of federal constitutional rights. You can go into traffic court with a claim that your federal constitutional rights have been violated. They're always relevant claims in any fucking court. So this Harvard graduate denied me a right to make a claim for a federal violation of my federal constitutional rights. So I had to limit my argument to the New Jersey State Constitution, which is a good constitution, so it wasn't that bad. And frankly, the New Jersey State Supreme Court case law was really beneficial, because there was a ton of cases about tax disparity between, different railroad companies and different trucking companies and different drug companies and regulations, and there was clear precedent in the Supreme Court of New Jersey where they actually gave a shit, okay, about the fact that you had to demonstrate, okay, that there was no disparity in treatment that couldn't be prevented, that wasn't easily mitigated against. So if you had, that was their scrutiny test. If there was some mitigating change, some fairness that could be distributed, like you could tax both, or you had to have a reason not to treat similarly situated people similarly. Okay, they didn't have to be treated exactly. They just, if you were similarly disposed, you had to be treated similarly. So if you have a vice like alcoholism or nicotine addiction, the simple argument would be you have to treat alcoholics the same way you treat nicotine addicts if you're going to claim they have some sort of disparaging impact on society. And clearly, by disparaging impact on society, it could be clearly argued that alcoholism is far more expensive. So, again, you're defending an 800% tax on cigarettes and a 30% tax on alcohol. Cigarettes kill people after their most productive years on average. They don't kill kids. They don't even kill young people. They don't even kill middle-aged people in any substantial number. They mostly just kill people in their 60s or 70s, okay, when the cancers finally show up. They certainly don't cause fatalities on the highway all over the place. They don't put a bunch of kids in the fucking, they don't paralyze a bunch of people and all this other shit that goes on because of alcohol abuse. All the abuse in the families, all the dysfunctionality, all the loss of productive years of work to alcoholism. It's hugely expensive to society. So the argument's a really simple one to make, that certainly alcoholism has cost us in social productivity far more than cigarette smokers have. And certainly in terms of the medical amount of medical costs, they're hugely higher for alcoholism than it is for nicotine addiction. So these are silly arguments to be making. That the disparity is exactly inverse to the proportion to the actual impact of the vice. And these are, like I said, these are case law for, from you can go back to the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. This is what the law basically said, is that you cannot use the tax code to discriminate against a liberty. And that's basically what the courts held, is that you can't use tax code as a punishment, as a penalty, as a weapon against people, unless you treat all people situated similarly with the same penalty. All right. And so now they've changed that somewhat. Like I said, the Supreme Court now has basically said, well, it's okay to discriminate if it's inadvertent. And that case came out of basically a veterans organization that was raising money in some sort of slimy way. And they basically gave them a slide. And then other people sued because it was like, why are you giving this veterans charity this advantage, and you're not giving the advantage to all these other people? And the court basically said, well, whatever. It's not a huge advantage, and it wasn't an intentional discrimination. It just turned out that way, so no big deal. We'll let it slide. But this is a big deal. This is a huge disparity. It has a huge impact on the lives of people who don't have the financial ability to pay for their liberty anymore. They can't exercise their liberty. The liberty is dependent on being able to finance the liberty, and they've taken the liberty and put it out of the reach of poor people. It's that simple. You can't be poor and smoke cigarettes. There's no practical way you can do that. And that's obscene. All right. So again, so I want to go back to the court case. So the judge, so this is the decision I got out of the judge. So the judge says, and I have him on tape recording of him saying it, that he doesn't have jurisdiction over federal constitutional issues. Then he prohibits me arguing from the federal Constitution. So I plead my case regardless. And I reduce to a minimum any references to federal law. And then, on the day he decides the case, this is after all the papers have been filed, all the arguments have been made, on the day he decides the case, he says, oh, wait a minute, I was wrong when I said I don't have jurisdiction. I do, in fact, have jurisdiction over federal constitutional issues. Now, this is after he's already closed the case. I can't make any further arguments. Okay, he's closed the case. I can't make any further arguments. And now he says I can argue my federal constitutional issues when I can't argue them. Now, this is justice, in your opinion? This is an appropriately closed case? Under these circumstances right there, that's not an appealable offense. That's not what you would call critical judicial error. You fucking cunt. You're going to keep defending this crap because what? My name's in Mendham and you don't like me? So you're going to sit there and defend that kind of fucking crooked justice? All right, and all over my papers is the word excessive taxation. It's in the paragraph of my complaint, is the words excessive taxation. In every document I filed, it's in every one of my listed claims is the words excessive taxation. And what is he? So I even made the argument in comparison to a clause in the state constitution about cruel and unusual punishment, and I used that argument that this is cruel and unusual taxation, that isn't permitted under the New Jersey Constitution. All right, so that argument was clearly made. And so here I'm basically coming with a claim of cruel and unusual punishment, let's say if I was a prisoner, and this is the answer a judge would give, and you'd say this is okay. He says we're allowed to incarcerate prisoners. He said exactly what you're saying, you asshole. He said we're allowed to tax cigarettes. That's not my claim. It's not any part of my case. It doesn't. It's almost irrelevant. It's him saying water is wet. What does that have to do with my entire case that I filed? It has nothing to do with the case I filed. I wasn't claiming New Jersey doesn't have a right to tax fucking cigarettes. And I haven't even gotten to the sales tax gimmick here. All right, because part of my liability was for sales taxes, right? Sales taxes paid on taxes. So they tax a levy, and then they make you pay a sales tax on the tax. And that, in the New Jersey tax code, was not legal. And I won't get into the whole morass of that bullshit, but he didn't even answer that claim. All right, and so then I go to the appeals court. I spend my $250 more or whatever the fuck it was. I file my 12 copies. I do all my bullshit. I file all the papers that have been filed in the case with the appeals court. Not an easy task, laborious, pain in the ass. And what do I get from the appeals court? I itemize all the issues where the judge is judicial error. I point out that I have him on tape. Here's the tape. I sent them the tape of him saying it, okay, that he doesn't have jurisdiction, and the tape of him saying, oh, wait a minute, I do have jurisdiction after he's already closed the case. And what do I get from the appeals court? No written decision. That's what I get. I get nothing. I get, we're just going to say it's okay what he did, and we're not going to even write a decision. We're not going to answer a single one of your claims. We're not going to respond to anything. We're just going to take your money and say, fuck you. And so then I did go to the state Supreme Court. I filed my writ. I spent another $400, and of course I got nothing from them because they can just ignore any case they want to. And so that's the justice I got, and you're going to defend that. You're going to say that is the way the American justice system should work. You should go to a court with a claim of a constitutional violation, and this is the fucking shit you should get as an answer. and you're going to defend that. Well, I say that says a hell of a lot about you, you motherfucking weasel. A hell of a lot about you. So to make this argument that I somehow lost the case, I think is bullshit. What I demonstrated is that judges fucking suck. That there is no justice in America. That the last resort that I thought existed, I really thought that in America you could, if you tried, if you went all the way, if you played it, if you played square, the game all the way through, that the system would redeem itself, that it was self-correcting. Because I thought the third branch of government was an independent branch of government. I had a delusion in my head that these people actually were the same people who wrote decisions in 1920. I thought they were the same men of integrity and honor that they used to be. But they're not. They're weaselly, lying son of a bitches. And I would bet every dollar I have and every minute of life of my future existence and my internal tortured guts that if you gave this motherfucker a polygraph, he couldn't pass it. All right? Because they're violating constitutional rights routinely, and they just don't give a damn. Because they're not about justice, they're political operatives. They're just defending whatever the legislature does because the legislature is what gave them their jobs. Period. They're appointed by political parties, and they will defend the system that put them there. And so they're as corrupt as the goddamn corruption comes. But again, defend that. Go ahead and defend that, you fucking lousy cunt. I mean, that's why this country sucks, is because pseudo intellectuals like you fucking little weasels who think you have a little bit of knowledge, you don't know anything about the real world or the real games being goddamn played, and you are facilitating the corruption and the evil that's fucked this country. You're the blight, you motherfucking cunt. And you should get exactly what you deserve. You should get exactly what you fucking deserve, which is no rights, okay? No appeal, no anything. You should get nothing. You deserve nothing, because that's what you're facilitating, is nothing. Because you have no integrity, you have no principles, you have no honor. You're just a fucking lying cunt. All right. I'll get to you again later. But really, fuck you. Really, fuck you. Yeah.